3 weeks of deafness didn't break me, but the moment my hearing came back, it shattered something far deeper. When silence ruled my world, I thought the worst part was not knowing what people were saying. I was wrong. The worst part was finding out. Today, the quiet ended. The sharp beeps of the monitor, the shuffle of shoes in the hallway, the crisp, clipped tone of the doctor, it all came flooding back like a storm breaking over a calm sea. I should have called my daughter first. I should have said, "Laura, I can hear again." But I didn't. Instead, I went home, wanting to hear her voice one last time before I told her. I wanted it to be special. What I heard minutes later, standing in the very house my late wife Kate and I built with our own hands, made my blood run cold. It wasn't just cruel, it was venomous. A knife, twisted slowly, from the very person I thought would protect me. In that instant, the joy of getting my hearing back turned into something else entirely, a burning fire in my chest. And as the shock gave way to outrage, I realized I wasn't just going to listen anymore, I was going to fight back. Before we start, I want you to stay with me. If you've ever been betrayed in your own home, if you've ever been treated like you're worthless, this story is for you. My name is Edward Miller Ed, to those who still respect me. This is how my hearing returned, and how I uncovered the ugliest truth I've ever heard. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor was supposed to be my private symphony. After 21 days of suffocating silence, even that simple electronic pulse hit me like fireworks in my chest, more thrilling than any jazz record Kate and I had swayed to in our living room. I pressed my palm against my chest, feeling my heartbeat sync with the monitor. "Mr. Miller?" Dr. Amanda Lee's voice cut through the air, crisp, sharp, undeniable. Not muffled, not distant. It hit me like a lightning strike. "Can you hear me now?" I nodded. Words felt too fragile to use. I didn't want to shatter this miracle with my own voice. But every tone, every whisper, every breath coming through the headphones was perfect. My hands shook as I tore them off. It's all back," I whispered, then repeated louder just to hear myself again. "Everything." Amanda smiled, jotting notes on her tablet. The faint scratch of stylus against glass, a sound I'd forgotten existed, made me grin like an idiot. "The inflammation's gone," she said. "Your hearing is back to normal. Honestly, I didn't expect such a fast recovery after that job site accident." That accident, God, I remembered it. The pneumatic drill screaming like a banshee inches from my head. No broken bones, just the whole world muted in a heartbeat. They told me it might be permanent. For 3 weeks, I believed them. But now, the hospital was alive with an orchestra of tiny miracles, elevator dings, hallway footsteps, nurses chatting, the whoosh of automatic doors. Laura would be thrilled. My only daughter had moved in to help, while I adjusted to deafness, making tea, cooking dinners, bringing her husband Mark over for repairs. I imagined her smiling when I called her name from the doorway. "I should call my daughter," I said, reaching for my phone. "Let's finish your discharge first," Amanda said gently. The nurse came in with her clipboard, rattling off follow-up dates. I signed form after form, savoring the sound of pen-scratching paper. Even my own signature felt alive again. Walking to the elevator, my footsteps echoed on the tile. The chime of the doors opening was almost ceremonial. In the parking garage, my old Ford roared to life louder, deeper than I remembered. The radio clicked on, playing an old country song Kate used to hum. "Everything happens for a reason," I muttered, repeating Kate's favorite line. The 15-minute drive home was a blur of sound engines growling, brakes whining, wind rushing through a cracked window. Finally, I turned into our driveway, past the neat lawn and white porch railings. Laura's SUV was there. Perfect. But as I stepped out of the truck, a strange, uneasy current ran through me. The joy I'd carried from the hospital felt unsteady. I didn't know why. Not yet. But I was about to. I climbed the front steps quietly, my key already in hand. Through the door, the sound of voices drifted from the back of the house, clear, sharp, undeniable. Perfect, I thought. I'd sneak in, stroll into the kitchen, and greet them like nothing had changed. Then I heard it. "God, that old burden is back home again." Laura's voice. My daughter's voice. The words slammed into me like a steel beam to the chest. I froze, the door half open, my palm glued to the knob. Old burden. 3 weeks of silence. and the first words I hear from her are poison. At least the insurance covered his hospital bills. Mark's voice chimed in flat, cold, almost bored. Could have been worse. I stood there, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe my new hearing was playing tricks. Then Laura's next words shredded that hope into dust. I just want this whole thing over with. 3 weeks of pretending to care about his every need, God. I'm exhausted. 3 weeks. Pretending. My knees nearly buckled. This was my daughter, the little girl, whose scraped knees I bandaged, whose college tuition I worked overtime to pay, whose broken heart I comforted when her marriage fell apart. The young woman I welcomed into my home whenever she needed it. I thought her moving in was love. Turns out, it was logistics. Sunset Grove has good reviews, she continued, her voice now brisk, businesslike. Not that expensive. The insurance settlement will cover the deposit. Mark perked up. Once he's out, we can start renovations. Knock out that wall, redo the kitchen. Realtor says it could add 50 grand to the value. They were talking about my home, the house Kate and I built, as if I were already a corpse they had to clear out. What's the timeline? Mark asked. 2 months, maybe less, Laura said without hesitation. We need to establish a pattern, memory issues, confusion. Dr. Coleman owes me a favor. He'll write up whatever evaluation we need. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. They were planning to fake my decline, my own flesh and blood conspiring to erase me. Think he suspects anything? Mark asked. Laura actually laughed. Are you kidding? He can't hear a thing. Poor old man just sits there nodding while I write notes. It's almost pathetic. Pathetic. The word burned hotter than the drill that took my hearing. I steadied my breathing. I needed to know how far they'd take this. Stepping into the kitchen, I made my footsteps heavy, like a man unsure of his balance. Laura's face flipped in an instant from sharp irritation to sugar-sweet concern. Dad! She gushed, rushing toward me. How are you feeling? You look tired. Oh. I let her take my arm, leaned in as if her touch was the most precious thing in the world. Mark's voice was louder than necessary. Hey, Ed, how'd the appointment go? I pointed to my ears and shrugged, playing the part of the clueless old man. Laura grabbed a notepad and scribbled, Doctor says your hearing might come back soon. That's wonderful news. I read it slowly, forcing a hopeful smile. Inside, I was burning her expression into memory, the wide eyes, the fake squeeze of my shoulder, the smile that was now just a mask. Mark scribbled under her note, Maybe we should look into some care options for when you're stronger, just temporary. Laura quickly added, So you have help with medications and therapy. Nothing permanent. I nodded as if it was the kindest thing I'd ever heard. For the next few minutes I played along, pointed at things, smiled at their questions, pretended not to notice the way Mark kept glancing toward the kitchen door, like he was already picturing the demolition. Finally, I pointed upstairs and wrote, Tired. Going to rest. Laura hugged me. Of course, Dad. Rest as much as you need. As I climbed the first step, I heard Mark murmur low but not low enough. He bought it completely. I reached my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed Kate and I had shared for 30 years. The daughter I'd loved had just mapped out my erasure. But they thought they were playing chess against a deaf old man. They had no idea the game had just changed. I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not with their voices echoing in my skull old burden, pathetic like a broken record I couldn't smash. And the way they talked about my home, Kate's home, as if it were nothing more than a fixer-upper on some property listing ready to be gutted and sold to the highest bidder. The Miller house has good bones. Damn good bones. I should know I poured my own sweat into every renovation. 20 years back, one of those projects turned into something I never imagined I'd need. A hidden advantage. The heating vents. They carried sound from the kitchen straight up to the hallway outside my bedroom. The next morning, I tested an old memory. Second step from the top creaks on the left, silent on the right. I slipped into position, leaning just enough to let the vent funnel their voices up like a confession. Mark's voice came first low, calculating. Sunset Grove is $4,800 a month. Medicare will cover most if we get the right evaluation. Laura's reply was as cold as it was matter of fact. Realtor says we could get at least $470 for this place. After the mortgage, that's $320 for the down payment on the Montana house. Montana. Kate and I had driven through once. She loved the mountains. But never, never had we talked about selling the home we built to live there. Hearing that word in Laura's mouth now felt like watching her spit on Kate's grave. "What's our next step?" Mark asked. Laura's voice dipped, but the vent caught every syllable. "Dr. Coleman says we need 2 months of documented incidents. Confusion, forgetfulness, leaving the stove on. But if we need to speed it up," Mark chuckled, the sound curdling my blood, "we could have him evaluated next week." "Maybe," Laura said, "but it has to look natural. He can't suspect anything until it's too late." Too late. I stayed there an hour, each word chiseling away the last illusions I had about my daughter. They weren't just shoving me into a nursing home, they were planning to erase me, my credibility, my dignity, my life. By lunch, I knew more than enough. They'd already booked the nursing home tour. They had a buyer's agent lined up. Dr. Coleman was ready to write lies on official paper. But I also knew something they didn't, something they'd never even considered. I wasn't just going to stop them, I was going to burn their plan to the ground. When I finally stepped away from the vent, I went straight to my study. The bottom drawer, under Kate's estate file, held a cream-colored business card. Robert Bob, Harris Attorney at Law. Bob had handled every legal move for me in the last decade. I could still hear his voice. "If you ever need to change your will in a hurry, call me first." I slipped the card into my wallet. Not yet. I'd wait until Laura and Mark left for a few hours. Let them think I was still the helpless, deaf old man they could manipulate. The more they underestimated me, the sweeter the ending would be. The opportunity came 2 days later. I sat at the kitchen table, the newspaper open in front of me, eyes skimming headlines I didn't care about. Every few seconds, I let my gaze flick toward Laura, who was at the stove scrambling eggs. Mark sat beside her, scrolling his phone like he was allergic to real work. Laura tore a page from her notepad and slid it toward me. "Mark and I will be out shopping this morning. Will you be okay here alone?" I picked up the pen and wrote in big, shaky letters, "Yes. Thank you for taking such good care of me." Her smile could have sold the performance to anyone else. But I'd already seen the wires behind the puppet show. She kissed the top of my head. "We'll be back around 3, Dad. There's soup in the fridge." I nodded, the perfect, grateful patient. At 10:15, their SUV finally rolled down the driveway. I waited 15 more minutes, watching through the blinds, making sure they didn't circle back. Then I took the cream-colored business card from my wallet and dialed. "Harris Law Office," came the voice on the other end. "Bob, it's Ed Miller. I need to change my will immediately." A pause. "Ed, I thought you were having hearing trouble." "It's complicated," I said flatly. "Can you see me this morning?" He must have heard the steel in my tone. "Come in at 11:30. I'll clear my schedule." I locked the door behind me, climbed into my pickup, and hit the road. The winter sun flashed off the hood as I drove the 12 minutes to Maple Street, to the same converted Victorian where Bob had walked me through Kate's estate years ago. Mrs. Patterson looked up from her desk. "Mr. Miller? You're looking well." "Better than they think," I said with a thin smile. Bob stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, temples streaked with gray like marble veins. He shook my hand, led me into his office, and closed the door. "All right, Ed, talk to me." So I told him. Every word I'd overheard through the heating vent. The nursing home, the fake evaluations, the sale of my home, the plans to strip me down to nothing. Bob's jaw tightened, though his voice stayed calm. "And you're certain you want to disinherit Laura?" "Every penny. Everything goes to David, the house, the savings, the investments. Laura gets $1,000 and a written statement she'll understand the second she reads it." He gave a slow nod. "It'll hold up in court, but Ed, you know she's going to fight this." "I'm counting on it." For the next hour, we went over the numbers. House $450,000, savings $180, investments $120, total estate roughly $750,000. "I'll need 2 witnesses for the signing," Bob said. "Use your staff, and I want a copy today." "That's unusual. So's my situation." By 1:15, the will was signed, sealed, witnessed. The envelope in my hands felt heavier than paper, should more like armor. Driving home, I pictured the moment Laura would open it, the exact instant her smile would break. Back in the kitchen, I placed the envelope dead center on the counter, impossible to ignore, then settled into my recliner, the paper back in front of my face. I listened to the clock ticking in the hallway. the fridge humming, my own steady breathing. At 2:45, the crunch of tires announced their return. Bags rustled. The door clicked open. "Hope he didn't try to cook anything while we were gone," Mark muttered. Then Laura's voice sharper, higher. "What's this?" Paper crackled. Silence. "Mark," she called, and now her voice had a tremor. "Get in here, now." Behind the newspaper I smiled. The first move had been made, and the game was no longer theirs. Mark's footsteps hit the kitchen tile like hammer blows. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Of—" Laura's voice cracked, the first real crack I'd heard in her mask. "That old man changed his will." Paper rustled hard, frantic. A sharp slap against the counter. "What do you mean, changed it?" Mark's voice was climbing, his disbelief turning to anger. "It's dated today," she snapped. "Everything goes to David. The house, the savings, all of it. I get $1,000 for reasons I will understand." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. "1,000?" Mark said at last, slow, dangerous. "That's it?" "That's it," Laura spat, her control breaking. 700 grand to my brother who hasn't been here in years, and I get tossed a token check like a charity case." Mark swore under his breath. "We can fight this. Claim he's incompetent. No sane man would cut out his only daughter." "That's exactly what I'm thinking," Laura said, her voice hard again. "We already have Dr. Coleman. Forget 2 months, we move now. Get him evaluated next week. We'll document confusion, wandering, forgetting things. This won't stand." A pause. Then Mark's voice dropped to that conspiratorial murmur I'd come to know well. "Think he suspects?" "No," Laura said flatly. "He can't hear a damn thing. We've been talking in front of him for weeks." "Good," Mark replied. "Then let's nail this down before he—" I turned a page in my newspaper. The sound snapped through the air like a gunshot. I wanted them to hear it. Laura's tone flipped instantly. Sugar poured over poison. "Dad? Are you awake?" I lowered the paper, blinking like I'd just been pulled from a nap. "Oh, Laura, you're back from shopping?" Her smile could have fooled anyone else, but I saw the tension in her jaw, the stiffness in her shoulders. "Yes. We picked up some things for dinner. How was your afternoon?" "Quiet," I said evenly. "Peaceful. That's good," she purred. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about your will." "My will?" I let my brow crease, my voice slow with confusion. "What about it?" She hesitated just long enough to tell me she was recalculating. "Never mind, we can talk later." "If you're sure," I said, folding the paper with deliberate care. "I think I'll go lie down for a while." I climbed the stairs at my usual measured pace, but the second my bedroom door closed, the act was over. I went straight to the nightstand and pulled open the drawer. Inside was the cell phone Laura didn't know I owned. I scrolled to a number I'd never forgotten and pressed call. "Dad?" David's voice was wary. "Laura said you were having hearing trouble. How are you calling me?" "I can hear just fine, son. For 3 days now, and I haven't told your sister because I know exactly what she's planning." I told him everything. The vent, the nursing home, the forged evaluations, the plan to gut my home and cash me out of my own life. On the other end, David sucked in a sharp breath. He wasn't just hearing a story. He was hearing a declaration of war. And I was already drawing the battle lines. 2 days later, I decided the charade was over. That morning, Laura and Mark left for town. I heard the front door close, her voice carrying in that sugary sing-song she used when she wanted the neighbors to believe she was the perfect daughter. The moment their SUV disappeared, I went to work. From the basement storage, I pulled out 2 large leather suitcases Kate and I had used for our anniversary trips. I carried them upstairs to the guest room Laura had claimed and began packing every silk blouse, every overpriced dress, every pair of designer jeans tossed carelessly around the room. Jewelry boxes, makeup kits, shopping bags still stuffed with unworn clothes from high-end stores, they all went in without ceremony. In the closet, I found Mark's business suits, his golf clubs, the gadgets he never used, and the leather portfolio fat with business cards from jobs he never kept. His suitcase filled fast. When I was done, I set both bags in the center of the living room floor, right between my recliner and the front door, 2 leather verdicts waiting to be read. I opened my newspaper and waited. At 1:45, tires crunched over gravel. Car doors slammed. Shopping bags rustled. Then the front door swung open. Laura's voice was mid-sentence until she saw the suitcases. Her shopping bags hit the hardwood with a dull thud. What? What is this? Mark's tone sharpened. Are these ours? They stepped into the living room. Laura's voice flipped into false excitement. Oh my God, Mark, he's finally packed. The old man's actually leaving? Mark grinned like a man cashing a check. You're kidding. That means no Dr. Coleman, no waiting. We start renovations next week. They laughed, celebrated right in my living room. I lowered the paper slowly and met their eyes. No, sweetheart, you are leaving my house. Then, Laura's face drained of color, her smile dying mid-breath. Dad, did you just hear me? Mark stepped back, suspicion flickering. Ed, how long? Since I got home from the hospital 3 days ago, I said evenly. I've heard everything. Every plan to dump me in Sunset Grove, every calculation on selling this house, every conversation about faking medical records. Laura's mouth opened, shut, then opened again. Dad, we were just worried about you. Worried? I stood. You called me a burden. You celebrated the idea of me gone. That's not worry, that's greed. Mark tried to play peacemaker. Look, maybe we got carried away? I cut him off with a look. You moved in because you couldn't afford your own place. Now you're going to find one without my help. Laura's eyes filled with practiced tears. She reached for my arm. Please, Dad, I'm your daughter. I made a mistake, but I love you. I stepped back. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been plotting my erasure. Mark's voice turned hard. You can't just throw us out. We have rights. You're not tenants, I said coldly. You're guests, and your welcome has expired. I pointed at the suitcases. Everything you brought into this house is in there. Take it and leave. The tears in Laura's eyes vanished like they'd been switched off. Her stare went flat and cold. You'll regret this, Dad. When you're old and alone... I've been alone since your mother died, I said. At least now I don't have to pretend otherwise. Mark grabbed one suitcase. Laura took the other. At the door, she turned back. If you change your mind... I won't, I said. And don't call me for money. The door slammed, the sound echoing through the house like a final gavel strike. From the window, I watched them wrestle the suitcases into their SUV. The engine started. They backed out, rolling down the driveway, and out of my life. The silence that followed wasn't the heavy kind I'd endured for 3 weeks. This was different. This was clean, quiet, free. I stayed at the window until their SUV rounded the corner, taillights vanishing into the cold afternoon. The house seemed to exhale. No footsteps pacing overhead, no hushed voices scheming in the kitchen, no syrupy tone masking contempt. Just silence, the kind Kate once called peaceful. I walked through each room like I was reclaiming territory. The bathroom shelves were bare, no overpriced lotions lined up like trophies. The coffee table was clear, no golf magazines from a man who didn't know how to commit to anything but his own comfort. The guest room looked bigger without their chaos spilling over every surface. In the kitchen, their abandoned shopping bags sat where they dropped them. I didn't care what was inside: designer clothes, fancy gadgets, or overpriced food. It all belonged in the trash. I carried them straight to the outside bin and let the lid slam shut. My phone buzzed. David. Dad? How did it go? They're gone, I said simply. It's over. Silence on the line then. I'm proud of you. Mom would be too. Maybe. I should have listened to her sooner, I admitted. You gave Laura every chance to be the daughter you deserved, David said. That's not weakness, Dad. That's love. We hung up, and I made myself dinner, scrambled eggs, and toast. Simple, mine. No one sat across from me with fake smiles. No one complained about what was on their plate. Afterward, I stood in the study, my eyes on the mantel. I took down the photos with Laura, not out of rage, but because I wanted the room to match reality. Kate always said, kindness is strength, but the day you stop giving it to those who abuse it, that's wisdom. Tonight, the house was mine again. My life was mine again. And for the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel like a sentence. It felt like freedom.